Okay, welcome back to class. So before I get into the lesson for the week, which is about planning, drafting, and revision, I just wanted to go over the end of the semester dates, important dates, just so you have a good idea of what's going on. So obviously this is our last week of class, and then the week after is when your final paper is due, grades are due, and then the semester officially ends. And so this week we're going to have a lesson, like I said, on organization, outlining, drafting, etc. And then you'll have a reading journal to do. You can see here with Adrienne Rich poem and Anxiety, a song by Megan Thee Stallion. And then I'm going to go over your exit essay as well. So that's where we're at for this week. And then your exit essay will be due the following Tuesday by midnight. So by the end of the day on Tuesday the 21st, because grades are due a couple days after that. So I need time to grade all of them. All right, so that's what the calendar is. And now we're going to jump into the lesson itself. So something that you can do to really improve your writing is actually planning ahead and thinking about it ahead. But I will say this, even though I'm going to go into a lesson right now about why it's important to plan, I also want to state that everyone's writing process is different. And so this is going to work really well for some people, and it's going to work really well for certain assignments. It doesn't mean that it's going to work the best for you, or there might just be some variation that you have to figure out for yourself, right? And so this is kind of the basic. But again, everyone's writing process is different. Some people like to just jump right in and write and go into that and not really outline or anything ahead of time. I think it is helpful to outline, and I'll tell you why. But again, everyone's writing process is different. So hopefully you can take some helpful advice from some of this, especially in terms of development, because the more you plan, the easier it's going to be to develop your ideas once you get into the actual body paragraphs of what you're writing. So before that, what I want you to do, and this is going to be coming not handy later. You're going to need this later because we're going to do, I'm going to go over what the reading journal is going to be. So I want you to read the lyrics to Anxiety, a song by Megan Thee Stallion, and also the poem Dreamwood by Adrienne Rich. Both are linked here, and they are also both linked on Blackboard under course content. And I want you to draw a brainstorming web responding to the following prompt. What emotions are being expressed in these two pieces of writing, and where do you see similarities and or differences? So just a basic brainstorming web. That's the type of outline where you draw a circle, and that's where your main focus is, and then lines with circles off of that are supporting kind of points, basically. Things that connect to your main supporting idea, or main idea, excuse me. So when you're planning your draft, you want to think about it two ways as you're in the planning stages before you really jump into the writing. You want to think about it conceptually and physically. And when you're thinking about it conceptually, you want to identify key concepts and a main theme, like I was just talking about with the brainstorming web. There should be some kind of main focus of what you're writing. And so everything else that you plan around should be supporting that main idea. And that will run throughout the entire paper and your entire narrative. Essentially, what is the paper about? What is that thesis, right? And so this main theme should connect all of the elements of your writing, which is including but not limited to your argument or main point. So if it is an argumentative paper, there should be, excuse me, that main theme should be supporting your argument. Or if there's some kind of focus, say if you're doing a research paper and you have to pick a topic, then that should be connecting together. Also your reasoning, and then your textual evidence. And so conceptually, you want to make sure that you have a strong idea, and that should be basically the backbone of what you're writing. It's going to be really difficult for you to develop on top of that if it's not a good idea from the jump, if it's not something that you can add to and add a lot of detail to and get a lot of supporting evidence for, right? So then you want to go into physically. How do you actually want to break the paper down? How do you want it to be organized on the actual page? And so paragraphs are obviously a way that we do this. You've been taught in high school the 5-paragraph essay, obviously, introduction, 3 body paragraphs, and the conclusion. You don't have to follow that 5-paragraph essay format, but it's a good idea to have an introduction and a conclusion and body paragraphs in between. It just doesn't have to be 5 paragraphs. It could be 8, it could be 10, whatever. It's going to depend on the length of the paper and how many points you're. And so there's going to be different ways that you can organize it once you get into the actual paragraphs. But breaking it down into sections by focus is a good way of doing this. And so if you're doing, again, a research paper of some kind, there might be different points that you're trying to make within a larger point. And so you want to look at what makes sense. Does it make sense to put it in chronological order? Does it make sense to start out simple and go into the more complex details of what you're trying to say as you go along? That's going to really help you to think about that ahead of time so that when you put it down on the page, it actually makes sense, not only to you, but also to your audience. Using outlines can also help you to get organized really well. And again, the more organized you are ahead of time, it's really going to be easier for you to develop those points once you actually start writing. And so obviously a brainstorm web is a good way to do this. Also just listing your concepts out. Even if you say something like you write a list with introduction and then what you want to put in the intro. Paragraph 1, what you want to put here, paragraph 2, et cetera, right? Just things like that, even if it's a few brief words, can really help you to organize your thoughts. And then you can use stuff like a storyboard or some kind of roadmap where you're just kind of detailing out exactly where you want to be heading in your paper. Okay, and so some things that you should not do while planning or just drafting in general. You don't want to organize your narrative like a reflection. This is something that I see students do a lot, is that they insert their own, it's not that you can't insert your own opinion, it's that they're inserting their own process into it. You really want to leave your process out of it. So for example, if you're writing a paper about global warming, you shouldn't say, when I was reading the book about global warming, this is what happened, et cetera, right? Leave your process out of it. It should really be focused around the topic and your point of persuasion. You also don't want to assemble your paper like a patchwork of sources. It really should be an analysis of those sources, and those sources should be supporting whatever your main point is. It's not a summary. And if you do assemble your paper like a patchwork of sources, it can become an issue of plagiarism, because how much of it is actually your own words and how much of it is just you reiterating whatever it is you read out of a source. So you really want to be careful with that. The backbone of whatever it is you're writing needs to be coming from you. Also, as I've been saying, you don't want to leave development out of your plan. So the best way that you can organize, especially if you know that you have a hard time with developing those ideas and you have issues with repetition once you actually get into the writing, if you develop more supporting points than you need, you will always have something to go back to. You know, have your outline next to you as you're writing, and you can always go back and say, okay, this isn't quite working. I'm going to insert this here instead. Or I need more supporting evidence. And if you have that listed in your outline, then that's going to really help you to stay focused and on track when you're writing. And so then you want to be turning this plan into an actual draft. So a good way to do this, and again, like I said at the beginning, everyone's writing process is different, and some people like to just jump right into the writing and not actually do this kind of outline, etc. But I really think that it's a good way to really organize your thoughts and get the best writing out of yourself. You might be a really good writer, but it doesn't mean that you can't be a better one. And so begin with an introduction and make sure you create a really strong thesis. And then you just want to get to writing. And like I was just saying, it's good to use your outline as a reference because it can really help you to keep on track. And then keeping that list of supporting quotes as well to use for particular sections that you know will have relevance to that. And then again, just keep writing and writing. Once you have the plan, that's really the next thing you got to do is to actually write. And it's okay if the plan changes. That doesn't mean that you need to scrap the whole paper. Okay, and so now what you want to do is take that brainstorming web from before and respond to that earlier prompt in roughly 250 words. And that's going to be your reading journal for the week. You can upload your web if you would like, and I can give you some feedback on that if you have any questions, but it's not required. So just make sure that you respond to that earlier prompt in roughly 250 words, and that is going to count as your reading journal for the week. I'll give you feedback on that, and I'll make sure to give that feedback right away as soon as you upload, or not as soon as you upload it, but as soon as I see that you've uploaded it, I'll make sure to give that feedback so you can use that going into the final exit essay. And so the assignment itself. You should pick a piece of art that is important to you and write an analysis of it. This can be any art, from a song to a book to a movie, an illustration, a video game, as long as it's appropriate and it's something that you have a good amount of knowledge about. And you should be writing this so that if it's a visual piece of art, that I'm understanding those visual choices, and then with any piece of art, also understanding the meaning and the purpose behind it without actually seeing it for myself. And this is not just a summary. You should really be explaining the what and the why behind it. So you want to make sure you're including what the piece is and a clear description of that. So summary is a part of this, but it's not the entire thing. And so make sure that that's just a small piece of it and that the analysis is really taking up the biggest part of this assignment. When it was created, so there's just like details about what it is, when it was created by whom, why it was created, what purpose, what does it represent, any meaning behind it, and this is your own interpretation, of course, how it was created, the process behind the art itself, and so that's going to be different if it's a visual piece versus something written, et cetera, and then why it is important to you. And so that's the biggest thing that I want to hear in this analysis. As you're analyzing the piece of art, it should be coming through why it is so important to you. And if you want to add any kind of context to that as well. And so this is your rhetorical analysis, right? Covering those things. That will be your rhetorical analysis. And so that's your final piece for the end of the semester. And this is your last lesson. This is the last time you'll hear my voice. So that's all I have for you. I'll be in touch via email until the end of the semester and a little bit more frequently than normal, so that everyone can, if you need any help going into the end, I'll really be available. So I hope you have a good rest of your week and the end of winter term, and I'll see you around.